Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Today I want to talk about an RCMP press release, and the title is Male Charged After 3D Printed Firearms Seized. Now, lots of you sent me news articles about this. I'm going to look at the original press release because none of those news articles actually included any independent investigation or analysis. And to you journalists out there, when you do this and parrot a news release like that, you're not doing journalism. You're just being puppets. Stop it. Anyway, that's my little mini rant, but let's actually have a look and discuss what's going on in this press release. So they say back in November, the Saskatchewan RCMP executed a search warrant at a residence, and they seized a number of firearms, including 2 3D printed firearms. And they've arrested an adult male, and they've charged him with a bunch of counts, including count 1, manufacture a restricted weapon knowing that they were not authorized to do so, which would be forbidden by Section 99 of the Criminal Code. The second count is the same thing, but for a prohibited weapon. And then the third count is possession of a restricted weapon together with readily accessible ammunition capable of being discharged in the said firearm and was not the holder of a registration certificate for said firearm under Section 95 of the Criminal Code. The next one is the same thing, but for a prohibited firearm. So you can already see that they're basically, they say prohibited weapon. I'll get to that in a second. We can already see that they're saying that there's 2 firearms, so the allegations are 1 restricted firearm and 1 prohibited firearm. At least. Sometimes there's more. They might sort of group them together under 1 count, but we know there's at least an allegation of 2 guns. The next one is possession of a restricted weapon without being the holder of a registration certificate for the firearm under Section 91 sub 1 of the Criminal Code. Same thing for a prohibited weapon. And then there's 2 counts of possession of a prohibited device without being the holder of a license under which he may possess it under Section 91 sub 2 of the Criminal Code. So let's read between the lines here. It seems that there's an allegation, as mentioned, of 2 firearms. Now, the police here call them restricted weapon and prohibited weapon, which is incorrect. This is a mistake police make all the time. But a restricted firearm and a restricted weapon are different things. In fact, there are no restricted weapons currently set out in the criminal code or the relevant legislation, but cops often confuse weapon and firearm. It's a thing. I'm going to assume that they mean firearms here. I can also read between the lines, and it seems that this individual likely had a firearms license because of the phrasing of this. When they say not the holder of a registration certificate, they leave out the license, right? So I'm guessing this is probably somebody who has a PAL. Now, there's an interesting little quote here at the bottom. They say it is illegal to manufacture a firearm unless you have a proper firearms business license to do so. This includes manufacture by traditional methods or other means. Illegal firearms can present risk to community safety, and the Saskatchewan RCMP is committed to removing them from the street. Illegally manufactured guns are of extra concern because they have no serial number and thus can't be traced if used in a crime. And we've got a couple pictures here. This looks like one that's still in the process of being printed, so they might have actually interrupted the print. And here we've got a box of sort of miscellaneous parts. And yeah, so reading sort of further between the lines, I see this 2 counts of possession of a prohibited device. And I find myself wondering if this whole investigation didn't get started with somebody trying to order a cheap knockoff suppressor online. This is a really common way that people are getting themselves into a lot of trouble. And I should probably do a video entirely on that, which would basically be don't. So, the question people often have is, what are the laws around making your own guns? Can I make my own guns? If I have a 3D printer, how do I do this legally? And the answer is complicated. I'm going to, at some point, do a full video where I go through this in some more detail, but I'm going to try to give a real brief, quick version here. And it's going to be quick and dirty and not entirely accurate, but it's going to be enough to sort of understand what's going on in this story. So one charge that this guy is facing is this one, weapons trafficking. Every person commits an offense who A, manufactures or transfers, whether or not for consideration, or B, offers to do anything referred to in paragraph A in respect of prohibited firearm, restricted firearm, non-restricted firearm, so all firearms, prohibited or restricted weapons, and again, restricted weapons don't actually exist at the moment, a prohibited device, any ammunition, or any prohibited ammunition, knowing that the person is not authorized to do so under the Firearms Act or any other act of Parliament or any regulations made under any act of Parliament. Now, I find this phrasing hilarious because knowing that you are not authorized to do so under any act of Parliament, if somebody tells you that they have read every act of Parliament and thus can know that there is no authorization out there somewhere, that person is a liar. Nobody has read every act of Parliament. It's just not possible. I would be actually kind of surprised if any sitting MP has read, I mean, unless they're super new, has read every act of Parliament cover to cover that was passed in their tenure. So, yeah, the phrasing on this is bad. But that is kind of a common problem that exists throughout the Criminal Code and the Firearms Act with respect to firearms and weapons issues. They're written really badly. So what does it take to be authorized? Well, this is kind of an interesting point. And the first sort of thing I'll note is that this doesn't apply to 84 sub 3. Section 99 is one of the accepted sections. But in terms of the authorization, this is where things get really muddy. Because if we go and look at the Firearms Act includes provisions that say the purpose of this act is to provide for licenses and so forth, but also to authorize, notably by sections 5 to 12 and 54 to 73, the manufacture of or offer to manufacture. Now, when we start looking at sections 5 to 12, those are talking about a person. So those are sort of individual licensing sections. So there is an argument to be made that that would include manufacture of anything that you had a license to have. That was the RCMP's position up until recently. However, that is not the RCMP's position now. And you might be wondering, why would they change? Well, this is why. That's right, because 3D printer go brr, and that scared the crap out of them. So the RCMP changed their position on this and decided that their interpretation of this law is that it's illegal to manufacture a firearm without a firearms business license. Now, the problem is that because this law is written so badly, it's really unclear as to whether that's actually required. And so the issue is that this is going to be something that has to get sorted out by the courts and almost certainly by the Supreme Court sometime. Now, in the meantime, we have the consideration, and I'll do a video later that sort of discusses some of the arguments for and against this principle. But in the meantime, what we have is this big problem. The RCMP's view is that this is illegal. And guess who gets to decide whether they're going to kick down your door and arrest you and, drag you in front of the courts? All right, that's the RCMP. So it's a very bad idea to manufacture a firearm without a firearms business license. I cannot recommend it. And in fact, as I said before, it is a legal question as to whether or not this is something that the Firearms Act actually forbids versus not. It is an interesting question. And as I've said in many a video, when a lawyer says something is an interesting legal question, what they mean is that it's super expensive. Expect that if when some lucky winner gets to take this up to the Supreme Court, it's going to cost them well over $100,000. It's going to be well into six figures. And most people don't have that kind of money and that kind of determination. So the bottom line on this is don't. Because if you are found manufacturing a firearm, the best case scenario is that you win at the Supreme Court and solve this legal question for all of us, and you probably go bankrupt doing it. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me. The other thing is that I think that the courts are going to have a strong inclination to rule against this notion that you can manufacture a firearm for your individual use. And the reason why is this thing. Yeah, that's right. The courts are going to be equally sort of worried about this specter of 3D printer go brr. So I don't, I think that there is a substantial likelihood that the court will resolve this whole legal clusterfuck of how this actually, how this law is to be applied in favor of saying, listen, no, you do need a business license. I can't say for certain, but I think that there's a substantial risk in that. So don't do it. I'll be interested to see how this case goes. I just can't say what's going on here. But the other thing is, if the guy was ordering suppressors, and again, I don't know. This is just me theorizing. I can't say for certain one way or the other. And I haven't read the information. I haven't seen any of the disclosure. This guy's, I got no connection to this guy. But, if that was what was happening, then the guy's ultimately likely to be on the hook for that in any event, which probably gets him a firearm prohibition, which means he might lose however many other guns. It wasn't clear how many other guns they seized, but I'm guessing it was probably lots of them. So this might be a real bad day for that person. Don't do these things. Anyway, as I said, I wanted to keep this kind of short and sweet to cover the basic issues here. I still want to do that longer video sort of going through the legal thorniness of this particular problem. But there's a whole lot of things I want to get done for that, and I don't have them lined up yet. It's proving more challenging than I would like. I'll leave it there. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope that this has been interesting or educational. I know a lot of you guys have wanted me to talk about this, and I'm still waiting to do the proper discussion of this. But at least this is a bit of a window into what's going on that. I want to thank my Patreon supporters on this. At the $50 level, Jonathan Wheeler, Canada's National Firearms Association, Mike, Kyle Martin, the CCFR, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited, and Marc-Olivier Damour. And at the $20 level, Peter Hilger, Matt Ward, Mark Whittington, Jane Babin Luxor, Dale Nesbitt, Cameron Johnson, Bruno R., Andrew Elsich, and Aaron Delsu. Thank you as well to all the $10 supporters who will be in the crawl immediately following. And thank you for watching. I hope this has armed you with knowledge, and I'm sure some of you are going to have questions about what all is going on here. Let me know in the comments below. I'll try to address them. As I said, probably repeatedly, I really want to do a proper video on this where I go through and sort of discuss just how complicated and just how thorny this particular issue is, and look at some, some cases, but a lot of the cases aren't sort of directly on point, and discuss some other emerging issues in this area. But that'll be for another video. So let me know if you have any questions. I can try to include them in that other video and try to make sure that sort of it's a full discussion of this issue. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope this has armed you with knowledge, and see you next time.